Today is the 7th of February 2020. We are in West Lapland in a town called Tornio. We have spent 4 days since Monday. We have been here with the West Lapland Psychiatric Clinic and Youth Center, listening about and learning about the open dialogue. And we want to just share our reflections at this point, which is the end of our trip. We are about to go back to London in a few hours, and to Manchester, and to Berlin. And I'm here with Nicolás Lorenzini, with Jonathan Lloyd, and I'm Roxana Parra. We are all members of the executive committee of the International Attachment Network, and we just want to do the exercise of having a reflective group, which is something that we have learned about during our stage, learning about the open dialogue here in West Lapland. So yeah, that's the plan for today.
We have seen this open dialogue kind of, let's say it's a setting of mental health care that includes the index patient, as we could say it, plus whoever you can get of their close circle, being it the family, let's say parents, children, but also, if possible, members of the community. And it does happen that West Lapland, being a very extensive area, is not as populated or big, and people tend to have a sense of community that I think is being lost in other mental health services, especially when it comes to like big urban, very populated areas. And that seems to, first of all, make the whole difference. The index patient disappears as the unique focus, and the relationships between that person who's presenting problems and the people around them is the focus this time.
Yes, and something that also makes the difference is that they have done a massive exercise to put all the data and the information of people in one place. So they are not using different systems, they are keeping all together, and that actually is ensuring some level of continuity as well. That is also, from what we have seen, is not only at that level in terms of data of the person, but also is done with the company of one member of the team. That same person will be the link, no? Although they are connecting with different services, and different specialists may come into the group with the family and so on. There is always one person that is keeping the continuity and the contact with the client in this case, no?
And that's where the major connection to attachment theory comes in, because the person that picks up the phone, it could be in the middle of the night on a Saturday, is a person that sees them all the way through their process. They're a good enough parent that's always there for them. So I think there's an optimum size here with this community. That's, I think it's 62,000 people with 160 staff. It's something about the numbers that just seems to make it work well with their philosophy. And I would like to think that we'll be able to implement that in other systems, but they seem to be big and cumbersome and multidisciplinary, and people fall between the gaps often, I think.
Yes.
I think having that constancy, that person that they can connect all the way through, and sometimes it could be 10, 12, 15 years for these clients, and it's the same person. I think that's absolutely key to the success of this system. It's a system that works, and the people within the system, and the person-centred approach. Not quite sure what the difference between open dialogue and person-centred necessarily is. Maybe it's semantics, but that's putting the person at the centre of everything, and including them and their family in all the decisions that are made about them, including medication, rather than having meetings that exclude them.
Yes.
I think is the way forward.
Yeah, we need to think about what you're saying makes me think about history, that this has been developed since the late 70s. Yeah. Then in the 80s is when this type of way of working and creating multidisciplinary teams that are thinking together with the client and making decisions. I think for me the most important part of all of it is that the decisions are done collectively, and that the client will be always consulted with it. Is part of the team. It becomes part of the team, and in that way is a very horizontal way of relating, not only between peers within the team, but also with the client, because the decisions are not made for them, but with them.
Absolutely. So it's like co-therapy in some ways, that they're all developing together.
Yeah.
And I think the training and the supervision and the personal development of the group, where the families are involved in the supervision, I think is also a fantastic method. Yeah.
We had the opportunity to be each one of us in actual sessions of therapy and intervention, and there were some radical differences on how we are accustomed to see therapy. And some of them is the presence of more than one therapist, and the open conversation that therapists not only make the rest of the family or the group or the patient engage, but they engage between therapists openly with the patient and their family present, and those might be very specific conversations that have to do with medication dosage, or also with feelings that the one of the therapists might have, or interpretations they want to make, and they just kind of consult with each other or enrich each other in the therapy without necessarily being in a supervision meeting that is like outside the presence of the patient. That was very radical for me, and I think that giving back responsibility to the patient in their own therapeutic process is what they call as well giving back agency.
Yes.
That seems that agency, the possibility that a person presenting an issue or problem has to become active regarding that problem, is in itself therapeutic. Do you think?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It gives them a sense of power.
Yes.
And ownership.
Absolutely, and the fact that by this conversation, that dialogue that is produced between the therapist, then the client can witness that, and then one of the things that I was talking about or was reflecting about in these days was about the timing and the clinical interventions. How and when do we make those decisions? Because we are used to work alone and be having probably those dialogues internally when with the client, and we are deciding specific interventions and so on. But in this case, that is as well collectively discussed. And even though a therapist may be thinking about different angles in which the work could go, the direction in which the work could go, that will be also opened and discussed with the client, and in the end the client decides which way they want to go, and that's so beautiful in terms of a sense of agency for me as well.
Absolutely. Now, I'd imagine that clients often have a fantasy about what their therapist is talking about with other people, other teams or their supervisor, and this is all out in the open and transparent and inclusive.
Indeed.
And flexible, and it just fits the model of attachment perfectly, really, without making it the focus is there underneath everything. And the 7 benefits of the model, it's all attachment theory, about consistency and dealing with uncertainty, flexibility, and being good enough. It all fits with attachment. Something
that for me as well was very poignant in the 7 principles that are spoken about within the open dialogue is the sense of responsibility, and how that can have such an important impact and positive impact, I think, in teamwork, because everybody takes responsibility for what they do, but also for what they say. And the fact that you need to be prepared to explain why are you saying what you're saying, when are you saying it, is for me it was a very profound way of sitting within a team, because in that way we are all responsible for ourselves, for our own opinions and our ideas, but also mindful of the impact that will have in our team, and how others may respond to that, and how they will then have also the right to ask. And because this is not open dialogue, we bring something important as well, is that everything is put in the open, but that doesn't mean that it's always about agreeing and being on the same page and sort of being in harmony. They were also talking about moments in which the difficult conversations need to happen, you know? But it's based on that principle that everybody is responsible, therefore you can have those difficult conversations from a respectful and also responsible place, no?
Something really positive within family groups, that conflict is necessary, and the rupture and then the repair is part of our gelling together.
Yes, indeed.
Do you think when we learn more about the open dialogue model? Do you think, if we imagine like the average practitioner who takes attachment theory as their core or base theoretical model in order to work, do you think people who work from that model are already doing something similar to open dialogue?
I would say yes.
Yeah?
Because what we were saying, you know, some specific principles of open dialogue, and the fact that it is this idea that in order to be able to share and to think together and reflect together, you need to be in a safe space. You need to be able to create that safe space in which we can then share, like here right now. You know?
I think it's more. I would say that I agree, but it's also. I think it's attachment theory meets social constructionism.
Okay.
But it's more about the team. It's more about the groups. Whereas I think you can have an attachment theory-based therapist sat on his own doing attachment work with his clients, and it's not quite the same as the structure involved here of this openness and inclusiveness and supervision in front of clients, which I don't think many therapists would do. So I think it's adding a much more socially constructed element to attachment theory, which I like the idea of that.
I was also thinking in very similar terms of like attachment theory meets like ecological theory, Uri Bronfenbrenner and all this, like everything is contained in a bigger social community. A person is included in a family is included in a local community in a city in a country, etc., etc. And that any change that affects one of these circles will have an effect in the problematic of that client in particular, that individual. But considering that they're similar and not completely the same, do you think anything from the open dialogue method could be implemented in someone who, let's say, doesn't have the opportunity to open to the family or to the community like this? Let's say this attachment therapist that works alone because that's the possibility of working they have. Do you think there is something from open dialogue that could enrich their practice?
Yes, but also I'm thinking in what you're asking, I'm thinking about training. I think training is the very bottom line the most important thing. First is not only read about it and so on, but you need to go through a process of training and understanding and a personal journey that will allow you to be in these kind of situations, in this kind of practice. And so training and understanding about the attachment theory, training and understanding about the systemic approach and the open dialogue approach. And I think it will be responsible to say that we do need to train in order to be able to do it, and not just think that we can take any bits of it. Oh, for sure we are doing it right now, right? But in order to make it responsibly, again, we need to create that journey for oneself, that when we can learn about it and how to be in it as well as a practitioner. I don't know.
I think it's about bringing the social more into your work, maybe. If you can't get the social into your work, I mean, maybe you might start to think about inviting family members as visitors into the therapy or something like that. But thinking outside the individual person and their impact on their society and their world, I think may be something that we need to consider a little bit more.
Yeah, and something about the dialectic as well, angle of the conversations, because when you were inviting, or what I've heard from it, is that when other members of the family were invited into the conversation, then you will get different angles of one event or what was happening, and that dialectical element of it makes it much rich and round, you know, and full in a way. You know?
Yeah, I think Irvin Yalom says that he learns more about a client when one of their partners or relatives comes into the therapy for a visit than he does when he's with them for many months or years, which I think is quite interesting.
Yes.